Years before the United States entered Vietnam, another great power had already fallen. A nation with an empire, a modern army, and decades of global influence. That nation was France. And in 1954, in a valley surrounded by mountains and jungle, France suffered a defeat so complete that even superpowers felt the shock. But what happened at Dien Bien Phu wasn't just the collapse of a colonial fortress. It was the first warning of what would later destroy America's campaign in Vietnam. After World War II, France returned to Vietnam determined to re-establish its colonial rule. But Vietnam had changed. It was no longer a small, divided colony. The Vietnamese had fought the Japanese, organized resistance, and tasted the idea of freedom. Under Ho Chi Minh and General Võ Nguyên Giáp, a new national identity was rising, united, disciplined, strengthened by decades of struggle. France believed it could reassert power through force. Vietnam believed this was its moment to finally break free. Two visions collided, and history shifted. General Võ Nguyên Giáp was not a traditional military leader. He was a teacher, a strategist, a historian, and a master of patience. France expected quick battles. Giap prepared for long ones. France measured victory in captured territory. Giap measured victory in endurance. He understood Vietnam's greatest strength was not weapons, but the willingness of its people to sacrifice for independence. This difference would shape the battlefield long before shots were fired. To break the Viet Minh, France created a massive stronghold in Dien Bien Phu. Rich in confidence, the French command believed. Their air force would control the skies. Their artillery would dominate the valley. Their paratroopers would secure the ground. And the Vietnamese would never, ever pull heavy artillery into the mountains. On paper, the French position was invincible. In reality, it was a trap. A trap France had built for itself. Under Giap's orders, thousands of Vietnamese soldiers began dragging heavy artillery, some weighing over a ton, up steep mountain slopes. No trucks, no machinery, only ropes, pulleys, and human determination. Men pushed cannons through mud that swallowed their legs. They hauled metal across cliffs, bit by bit. Some died from exhaustion. Others continued through monsoon storms. What France thought was impossible. Vietnam accomplished in silence. By the time the French realized what was happening, the mountains around them were full of hidden guns, ready to fire. When the first shells fell, French commanders were stunned. Artillery they believed could not exist now surrounded them from above. French runways were destroyed. Planes were shot down. Supplies could not land. Morale collapsed. Meanwhile, the Viet Minh dug trenches, one line, then another, slowly tightening around the valley. Every day, the circle grew smaller. Every night, Vietnamese soldiers moved closer. France, trapped in the valley, could only watch the end approaching. After 56 days of brutal fighting, France could no longer endure. Strong points fell one by one. Officers sent desperate messages for reinforcements that never came. Soldiers ran out of food, ammunition, and hope. Finally, on May 7th, 1954, the French command surrendered. A Western superpower had been defeated by a nation fighting with older weapons, limited resources, but limitless willpower. Dien Bien Phu marked the end of French rule in Indochina, but its meaning stretched far beyond France. The French defeat revealed 4 truths. 1. Vietnam will endure any amount of suffering to defend its land. 2. Terrain, jungle, mountains, weather, always favors the Vietnamese three. Technology cannot overcome a people fighting for independence. 4. Foreign powers cannot impose their will on Vietnam. These were not theories. They were facts, carved into the mountains of Dien Bien Phu. When American advisors arrived, French officers warned them, "You cannot win here. We tried. You will fail too." But the warnings fell on deaf ears. When the United States entered Vietnam, they believed they were stronger, smarter, and better equipped than France. More helicopters, more bombs, more troops, more technology. But they repeated the same mistakes. They underestimated the Vietnamese will to fight. They misread the terrain. They misunderstood the people. They believed firepower could achieve what France could not. But the war in Vietnam was never a contest of strength. It was a contest of endurance. And endurance belonged to Vietnam. France's defeat was not just a chapter of colonial history. It was the first echo of a much larger collapse, the failure of foreign powers to understand Vietnam. Dien Bien Phu taught the world that a nation fighting for its identity can defeat empires, armies, and superpowers. France learned this truth in 1954. America would learn it again, 20 years later. And history will always remember that Vietnam was never conquered by force, only misunderstood by nations that believed strength alone could win.